Have you ever heard of Gervase Markham, a universal genius, and of his impressive literary works? A scientific historian, Charles Mullett, in 1944, tried to find out, analyzing Markham's literary work, its book titles you see here, who the man could have been, living in Shakespeare's Marlowe's time. To Charles Mullett, the ubiquitous character of Markham immediately appeared. His protean manifestations baffled him, and he didn't know how to label a man who wrote familiarly and learnedly on domestical animals, sports, soils, housewifery, soldiering, and manners, who collected tag and old saws, and who had a considerable literary output in the artistic sense. His scholarly equipment included a knowledge not only of Latin, French, Spanish, Italian, and Dutch, but on agriculture, a champion on improved methods of horse breeding and racing, etc., a man of prodigious industry. Did incomparable poet giants, other than Shakespeare or Marlowe, in fact back at those years? Or could one even find reasonable contextual arguments that Markham must have been one of the multiple pen names of concealed true Shakespeare? Let's reflect Markham's writings, thoughts, and philosophy in some details, number 1 to 25. The aim of this video is to identify possible logical or contextual arguments within the works of Gervase Markham, about whom absolute nothing is certain, not even his date of birth and death, as yet another of the multiple pen names of the true poet genius who wrote Hamlet and King Lear. 1. The Gentleman's Academy, 1595. Compare Shakespeare's sentence of the messenger in Henry VI, Part 2, Act 1, Scene 2, 1a, with Markham's The Gentleman's Academy. The Book of Albans, 1595. A well-found work on hawking, falconry, hunting, precious stones, titles, coats of arms, weapons. 2. The Most Honourable Tragedy of Sir Richard Grenville, Knight. Consider that Shakespeare in the years before dedicated his first poetical works, Opus 1, Venus and Adonis, 1593, Opus 2, Lucrece, 1594. To Henry Wriothesley, H.W., Markham, in 1595, seems to continue to do so in his second opus. You may ask why Markham expresses in his dedication to Henry Wriothesley that the grave from whence his humble muse is raising, A, and why there are his ambiguous tragic lays, B. Should we really think these strange revelations, A plus B, are purely accidental? Don't they fit much better to the true Shakespeare? 3. The Poems of Poems, or Sion's Muse, 1596. How can it be that a singular person only, historically, Francis Meres was well informed on Markham's book when noticing, 3a, in his Palladis Tamia 1598, that Markham wrote Salomon's Canticles in English verse? Why Markham was dedicating his book 3 to the 11-year-old daughter Elizabeth, 1585 to 1612, of Philip Sidney. How to explain Markham's dedicatory expression of his love to Salomon, as well as his love to Elizabeth's adored father, Philip Sidney, 1554 to 1586. Her mother, Frances Walsingham, daughter of Sir Francis Walsingham. Is that really coincidental? Doesn't it fit better to the true Shakespeare, alias Marlowe? Marlowe's favourites clearly were men like King Solomon of the Old Testament and the legendary Dr. Faustus, both remembered for their wisdom, but driven by very complementary Marlowe-typical forces. 4. In Sonnet 89 we learn from Markham that Queen Elizabeth cheered his poor soul, repaired his ruined mind, did bind his fears to exile. Do Markham's identifications such as my poor soul, my ruined mind, my fears to exile, my waste-consumed life, my distress had no autobiographical background? Do not these characterizations go better with Marlowe, the true Shakespeare? Is the mighty poetical mastery in Markham's early art of poetry, works 2, 3, and 4, imaginable at all for a beginner? Work 2, impressive 188 poems, octavos ababa BCC. Work 3, impressive 100 poems in 8 eclogues of all different verse types. Work 4, impressive 257 poems, sonnets and octavos. 5. A Health to the Gentlemanly Profession of Servingman, 1598. The verses contain 12 stanza poems with the refrain Death of Liberality, which is an exact thematic continuation of the 45 stanza poem from Richard Barnfield's The Complaint of Poetry for the Death of Liberality of the same year, to be found also in Lady Pecunia, 1605. Can there be any doubt that Markham's poem 5 and Barnfield's poem must have originated from the same singular brain? Thus both GM and RB, most logical and plausible, being different pen names, pseudonyms, of the same true concealed poet genius? Consider the concordances between Markham and Barnfield are beyond any coincidence. Same topic, same city, same year. Perhaps it is advisable to reflect a bit more on unknown. Barnfield, R.B. Barnfields. Orpheus, his journey to hell was entered in the Stationer's Register August 26, 1595, and published later that year. Only 2 copies have survived. There are enough arguments to suppose that the poet genius, true Shakespeare, here is concealed as R.B., on a superficial level is revealing us the mythological tale of Orpheus, 1595, but on a deeper level metaphorically uses the mythic content of his work to dramatize the common Elizabethan view of Orpheus as the archetypical first poet in the country. Meaning autobiographically his recent downfall, his fatal journey to hell, Marlowe's disappearance. The anonymous poet, R.B., follows Orpheus through the narrative by reenacting his own life. He becomes Orpheus. In Barnfield's The Complaint of Poetry, we learn from the dedication that bounties herein are only feigned, from stanza 44 that death had spared his life. The tyrant decided he will not die. Be aware, Barnfield's unique artistic texts and context only make sense if you recognize behind the unknown initials R.B. the greatest poet genius of the Elizabethan and Jacobean era, Christopher Marlowe. One cannot resist the impression that Markham's key, The Tears of the Beloved 6, as well as Mary Magdalene's Lamentations 7, deal on the surface level with the biblical matter on the passion and resurrection of Christ, but on a metaphorical level with Mary, Sidney's loss of her lover, poet genius Christopher Marlowe. How else should one interpret the dedicatory praise in 7 ad autorem in Mary's Lamentations? Is it conceivable at all that in Markham's book 7, the hymn of praise for the author, ad authorem, by unknown W.F., only in the 1604 print, could have related to a poet Markham when reflecting the contextual meaning? Do not thy gracious fortune so despise, in seeming to abridge deserved praise. Cherish the muse in hope of better days, wrong not thy worth in keeping close thy name, but seeks to let men know who did the same. Mount on the wings of ever-living fame, thy verse shall bring thee immortality. Can those wishes really as be meant addressed here to a poet Markham? In hope of better days, your ever-living fame, your immortality. Already Bishop Joseph Hall noticed in his satires that Markham's verses celebrates the sacred spouse of Christ with the levities and in the language of a lover, singing the praises of his mistress. Markham, in his English Arcadia, on page 14 to 16, is dealing with Marlowe's Hero and Leander, with details of the mythical story as an autobiographical metaphor or allegory on the alleged drowning of the poet genius. The Dummy Knight, 1608. The play engages with the history of the Essex Rebellion. It not only reveals and unveils the author's capability to write sophisticated plays, really Markham's first play, but also his philosophy of palliating his own act of rebellion and treason. Consider that Marlowe in May 1593 was mortally threatened because of being accused of rebellion and treason, the Dutch libels, and by no means primarily because of heresy and atheism. When and where may Markham have acquired his extraordinary ability as a dramatist to write this amazing play as his very first dramatic work? Amazingly, Markham has embedded in his play The Dumb Knight some startling memories of Shakespeare's poem Venus and Adonis. It is not immediately recognizable that lines signed as 1 to 6 from Markham's play are taken from Shakespeare's Venus and Adonis, 1593, but that Markham additionally expressed that never an orator's clerk in this kingdom but is beholden unto that book, as it is called, Maid's Philosophy, or Venus and Adonis. Do these stunning intertextual links between Markham's play and Shakespeare's poem Venus and Adonis make any sense of plagiarism? Are they not primarily pursuing the true author's purpose of drawing the listener's attention to the book Venus and Adonis in accordance with targeting advertising? Couldn't all these observations support the legitimate assumption that Markham must have been an alias of the true poet genius? Even though the title page of Ariosto's Satires, 1608, clearly indicate Markham as author, remarkably 7 years later, 1615, a certain Robert Tofte, R.T., claimed in his translations of The Blazon of Jealousy, 1615, the work as his work. Who was that gentleman, Robert Tofte, R.T., today best known for the reference in his sonnet sequence Alba, 1598, to Shakespeare's play Love's Labour's Lost? First time in 1598 ever mentioned, as well as in print, Q1, with Shakespeare's name on the title page. Tofte, in his sonnet for the play Love's Labour's Lost, tells us ambiguously, this play a pledge was unto me, comical to everyone, save me, tragic like to me. Does anybody really believe that Robert Tofte, RT, former GM, has nothing to do personally with the true author of Love's Labour's Lost in his telling text? The same question applies to another poem of Robert Tofte, RT. Can anybody really believe that the gentleman Tofte personally has nothing to do with this ambiguous divine poem B in Alba, telling and asking us ambiguously about the poet's life and death? Read first frame B, thou life which life are called and yet are death. Thou death which death are termed and yet art life. Which of you maintain my vital breath, which prolongs my life, most of you twain? Tofte's divine poem best relates to Marlowe, and the poetical revelations of his bizarre double situation, dead and alive, death and life at the same time, and does not also Robert Tofte's comparative dedication C to Tamburlaine is intended to reveal the true author Marlowe? Markham offered in his Conceited letters, 1618, an impressive kind of manual, how to conceive letters for various specific occasions. In a letter of grief to a fair creature that was separated from her second self, we are heavily reminded to Marlowe's first and second self having made a metamorphosis of himself. He seems to present a letter solution to his own life situation. In his letter proposal, we seem to notice the complementary philosophical specifics of life virtues. For Markham's, that is Marlowe's advice to the reader. The play turns Herod and Antipater into a popular drama of passion, villainy, and violence. Antipater's rise to power clearly resembles Edmund's in King Lear. Antipater is even made a bastard son. By birth I am a bastard, yet my wit shall bear me above the true born. Consider, Shakespeare stands alone among the major playwrights of the early modern London stage in making repeated references to Herod. This observation supports the idea that Markham and his even more completely obscure, inauthentic co-writer Samson were fictional pseudonyms. Markham's best-known works, all most impressive bestsellers of its time, going through many editions and reprints, including the 2-volume work Country Contentments and many others. Gervase Markham undoubtedly must be seen as an incredible genius, a polymath, whose individual knowledge and artistic literary abilities spans an unbelievable number of matters of life science, and the arts, drawn from all kinds of studies, ranging through all fields of all disciplines, often expressed as Renaissance men applied to gifted people of that age, like Michelangelo, Da Vinci, Dante, etc., who sought to develop their abilities in all areas of accomplishments: intellectual, artistic, social, physical, and spiritual. All Markham subjects are impressive writings, such as husbandry, housewifery, farriery, horsemanship, military tactics, hunting, hawking, fowling, fishing, archery, heraldry, astrology, religion, history, languages, medicine, nobility, poetry, romances, drama, etc., etc. Let's pick out, at the end, one absolute remarkable subject. Markham in this book, The Enrichment of the Weald of Kent, IWK, emphasises on the title page that it was painfully gathered for the good of this island, England, and written by a man of great eminence and worth. He explains what the marl is and its profitable use. Can it be coincidental that Markham's complete essay, like these pages 8 to 9, dealing and filled with the term marl, written by a man with great eminence? Can it be really coincidental, page 4, that Markham amazingly is pointing to marl in books of gainage that were written in the days of King Edward II, or in the times of the Barren Wars, as of the wars between the House of York and the family of Lancaster that have been newly born and revived, because of the very true art of enriching the ground by marl seems to lie hidden in part, as yet not discovered to the full. What a stunning, amazing broad hint for Marlowe's Edward II. As for the true Shakespeare, the Henry plays, hiding behind the pseudonym Markham. A final observation, the poetical tract of an obvious satire. J.M. Gervase Markham, corpus sine capiti visibili, a man not identifiable, because without a visible head, fits perfectly to concealed Marlowe, as Markham. A final observation, the poetical tract of an obvious satire. J.M. Gervase Markham, corpus sine capiti visibili, a man not identifiable, because without a visible head, fits perfectly to concealed Marlowe, as Markham.